Hello and welcome to The Actor and the Engineer. My name is Paul James. I'm the actor.
I'm Josh Knapp. I'm the broadcast engineer.
Here we go, Josh. I just got
You got a frog in your throat there.
big time. It just happened too.
Yeah, we were talking like right beforehand, and you had just the clearest voice ever, and then all of a sudden,
I pressed record and
that's it.
it's something about the microphone.
We're gonna do something different today. We're just gonna talk about kind of what we've watched and just a couple things that have happened recently, and maybe have just like a shorter episode, and then kind of see how we like it, and then also ask you guys what do you think we should be talking about, and then kind of preview what we're going to talk about for our next episode. So next time, our next episode is going to focus on prison escape movies. I initially was thinking like, oh, we'll just do like prison movies that are set in prisons, and then I started looking, and there's a lot of specifically prison escape movies. So I mean, it kind of makes sense, but I think there'll definitely be enough for us to talk about. And specifically, we're definitely going to mention a few, but the one that I was interested in you seeing was an older film called The Grand Illusion. It's a Jean Renoir film, French film. So I think that'll be interesting to see and to talk about. Plus, there's so many movies that we won't have any issue bringing up a bunch of other ones. I'm going to watch or I'm going to finish Escape from Alcatraz, and then there's a bunch more, but you seem to like that idea.
Yeah, I love the idea. Because as soon as you said it, I was like, oh yeah, I love that movie. Oh yeah, I've seen that movie. Oh, I love that movie. Oh, I love that movie. Yeah, let's do that. Because it's an interesting genre. It really is. I mean, you've got, we'll talk about it, but, Shawshank Redemption immediately comes to mind. So it's like, you could spend 5 days talking about that movie and still not completely satisfy your need to talk about that movie. So it's going to be interesting. Yeah. I'm looking forward to it.
Me too. Well, in the meantime, there's been a bunch of new trailers coming out. I mean, big trailers, and also Tenet in the theaters, but it's not shown anywhere close to me, and I'm assuming it's not shown anywhere close to you. So, do you guys have drive-ins up there?
I think a couple of them have reopened, but not anywhere. Honestly, I don't know. Okay. I'm not going to lie. I've seen something online about a drive-through opening, but I'm not sure where. That would be something.
Yeah. I think.
Now I would go to that.
Me too.
But I'm not going to a theater right now.
Yeah, me either. So yeah, but so I guess we'll just hit pause on Tenet. But it made an okay amount of money, like $20 million over the weekend. But I guess we'll see what happens as it goes on. But the big thing that we saw this week that I wanted to talk about was the Dune trailer. That looked pretty serious. So I don't know anything about Dune. I think we've talked about this in the past, but another big fan of the book that I know you've read the book, right?
Correct. Yes.
Yeah. So another big fan of the book is friend of the show, Justin Arner, and he's like super excited about this new Denis Villeneuve movie. But I know you are too, but I kind of want to come at it from I know nothing, and want to go at it as just like why do they have these things in their noses? I understand there's a sandworm, but that's about it. So I know a little bit more about it after seeing this trailer, but I think they did a pretty good job of having a little bit of intrigue in the trailer. How was it for you, for somebody who's seen it in a film iteration and also has read the kind of bigger book?
And they have a sci-fi miniseries based on the books, Dune in particular, and then Children of Dune. Anyway, it was interesting because what you just said was even more interesting to me, that you want to go into it not knowing anything, but you wouldn't begin to believe what they have already revealed in that trailer. There are a lot of significant things that they revealed. That scene that you see, what's in the box, that's a very famous sequence in that book and in that original movie and the miniseries and so forth and so on. So yeah, I thought it was interesting. It would be interesting coming to it with a fresh take because I know so much about it. I could instantaneously place where everything was in the trailer, where it's supposed to be in the movie. And like I said, they showed you some significant stuff. So I'm excited about it. I like the story. I like the original movie. I didn't quite understand the original movie until I saw the Sci-Fi Channel's miniseries, and then I read the book. So I did everything in reverse. and I was locked and loaded because that book is dense. It's really not an easy read. So knowing the story helped a lot. So yeah, I'm interested. I think everybody is cast perfectly. Perfectly. It's going to be interesting.
I mean, I think that we kind of talked back and forth, just texting back and forth about the layout of the trailer, and I'm not gonna give Denis Villeneuve any credit or blame for the trailer, but I did think that it was very 2019, 2020 of a trailer where they even included the slowed down remake of an old song, you know, a la every action movie trailer you've seen in the last 5 years. But whereas I think, and I agree with you, I think that the Batman did it right. This film used Pink Floyd's Eclipse, and it just kind of like ripped it apart and slowed it down and tried to make it build, which that is a very, that song just starts nowhere and then ends in this huge crescendo. And I felt like it took away from the movie or the trailer itself as a piece of art by using that particular music. And I felt like I wish they would have just stuck with the score. I think that the visuals are stunning enough to where having the score augment it would have been more than enough for me.
I agree with you. I think it's too on the nose. I think if I didn't know that song, and I love that album, and I love Pink Floyd, and I listened to Dark Side of the Moon on repeat one whole summer, and the summer before that I listened to The Wall on repeat. So I had a little bit of a twisted upbringing. I think I'm lightening up a little bit in my middle age, but when I was a child, I was so deep and so serious, and everything was so textured and so dark, and I was trying to move. Oh. So I have a love for that stuff, and I have a love for the darkness, no pun intended. I'm not sure how I would have felt about it if I didn't know the song. That said, it's just so on the nose. It's a movie about them going to a different planet. They have to, well, fold space. It's not giving anything away. But, you know, it's like Dark Side of the Moon, Eclipse. It's just so on the nose. And immediately it took away from it for me. Actually, the second time I just watched the trailer, I lowered the volume so I would be watching instead of listening. The irony is, or I don't know if this is irony or not, you just mentioned the Batman. And by the way, when we talk about the Batman, we will be the Paul James and the Josh Knapp and the actor and engineer. Because I'm bound and determined to put THE in front of everything from now on. If Batman can do it, I can do it. But the thing about that one that is different is there is a feeling that song gave to the trailer, to the Nirvana song gave to the Batman trailer. This one just seemed to be like, I'm not sure why they chose it, but it felt like anybody who might be weirded out by a sci-fi film with Timothée Chalamet and Zendaya in it might not be as weirded out if they had this cool background song that they kind of know, but they don't know. And it made it groovy and like hip to like a sci-fi film. It doesn't serve it for me, but it doesn't matter in the long run because a trailer is not the movie. And I'm sure that song's not in the movie. Yeah. And if it is, okay. I can't imagine it being in the movie.
Yeah, the Rebecca trailer just came out. They're remaking, and I say they, it's Ben Wheatley, who we've talked about a few of his films on this podcast, both Kill List and High Rise, but and then also Free Fire too, his more recent one. But he decided to remake Rebecca, and I don't really know the backstory behind this, but it's going to come out on Netflix, and the trailer just came out today. And it's got Lily James, who I last saw in Baby Driver, and then Armie Hammer. So yeah, I'm interested to see why specifically Ben Wheatley wanted to remake this story, and I want to know kind of what his focus was on that. So I'm interested because I kind of expect some off the wall stuff from Ben Wheatley, and we get this. So maybe it will be off the wall. I'm not sure. But did you see the trailer?
Yes, I have. We talked about this a million times, that we often want a director who is usually somebody into blood and gore to do a romantic comedy just to see if they have a different take on it. And Ang Lee comes to mind immediately. He, I've said this often about his films. Which one of these go with the other? None of them. He's just eclectic when it comes to his stories. So we've often talked about this. Nothing about that trailer immediately called me to it until I saw Ben Wheatley's name. And then I went, whoa, okay, well, that's interesting. So I don't know why directors do stuff like this. Maybe they are challenging themselves, or maybe this story is personal to him. Like he loves that original movie, or he loves the story,
the
and he
novel.
wanted to see his take on it. And you mean, yeah, why not? Why not? Why not?
All right. Well, I mean, I guess I'll definitely be there. Speaking of Netflix films, Mank. Did you see any of the pictures for Mank? That's David Fincher's new film.
Yes, I have seen pictures for that.
Looks beautiful in black and white, and
Yeah.
I am super excited. You got Gary Oldman and Amanda Seyfried. I mean, that's gonna be really cool. I'm super excited about that. I did want to talk about the Oscars eligibility changes that they're going to be making about inclusion standards. Like, did you get a chance to read any of that for 2023 films?
I did.
Yeah. What do you think about that? It's very complex. I'll say this first, just to kind of frame it. So it's a complex kind of like rubric of this and this and this, or this and this and this, or this type of a thing. So it's not, I don't think it's like painting people into a very specific corner, but it is definitely like setting up walls that you need to navigate through. I don't want to say walls, setting up paths that you need to navigate through. So yeah, what do you think?
I just read an article about how it's going to backfire.
I don't know
and
about that.
I see both sides of it. I understand. I mean, it's less than 3 or 4 days into it, and people are writing articles about how it's going to backfire. My ultimate question came down to, if not this, then what? How do we get that from #SoWhite to inclusion to it actually happening? People have a lot of problems with affirmative action, but what other choice do we have? If we're not going to include, then sometimes they have to make rules and regulations that include people. I often think of Loving, interracial marriages. It took, a governmental rule and law to say, no, Virginia, you can't make it illegal anymore. Virginia was one of the last states to say it was okay. Gay marriage, all these things that has taken a Supreme Court decision. And they're all controversial. I get it. Roe v. Wade, I get it. It's all controversial. But sometimes you have to make up rules and regulations that make people include people, because they just don't, whether it be systemic racism, systemic homophobia, systemic sexism, whatever it may be. Or it might just be people don't think outside their own box. They don't think, I should hire these people, or I should look at this person, or what's this person's view on this?
Yeah.
And then once we have these rules in place and people are gently pressured into doing things, then when the person walks in the room, because they have to have the person walk into the room, that person's going to come up with some brilliant idea that's going to change the game. And that person would have never made it in the room if they weren't forced into the room. And I'm using big words like forced and pressured and tying somebody's hands or making somebody do something, because that's essentially what it is. I read the list of what people needed to include, and then it said, oh, you need 2 out of these 6.
That's right.
And I was like, oh, okay, that's okay. Okay, I get that. Yeah. And then you need this many people working on your film. That to me is brilliant, because how many people don't get a job because they walk in the room and something in our psyche is not allowing us to see that person as the qualified person for the job. We're seeing something else. And how else is it going to change? These rules often flip and flop around. Sometimes they work, sometimes they don't work. A lot of times I think that don't ask, don't tell. That's a prime example of that, something that was set up that seemed good on paper that ended up being really bad. But in the end, why are we asking the military? Wow, I'm so high on my soapbox right now. I just got dizzy from how high I was. Let me come down for just a split second. Okay, let me take a drink of water. I'm good. But the point is that why are we asking the military institution, which is one of the oldest institutions in this country, to open their mind to something that the rest of the country is not opening their mind to? The thing seems to be that when people are told they have to wear a safety belt, click it or ticket, then people start saving people's lives because they're forced into doing something they might not want to do. So I don't know if any of that made sense, but I think it's a good thing.
The examples you made were all referencing federal laws or state laws or federal institutions, but this specific change to the Oscars rules or the Oscars eligibility requirements are specifically for a group of tradesmen, a group of and it's an award show too. I mean, it's not something that is going to prevent anyone from making whatever movie they want. You could have an all-white cast, you could have an all-male cast, you could have an all-male crew. I mean, shoot, there are some independent films where if you've got the same person who's writing, directing, editing, cinematography, even starring in. I mean, Primer is actually an example of that. Like, there's no way Primer would ever meet these inclusion scenarios, but that wouldn't prevent Shane Carruth from making it. But I think that what this is mainly pointing out is that you don't have to do these specific things. You don't have to have one person of every ethnicity in every film that you make. But if you decide to make a film about a bunch of white guys, maybe you can incorporate people in other places in this film if you want to be considered eligible for an Oscar. But I mean, there's going to be certain scenarios where you're not going to be able to change the makeup of the actors specifically because they're in front of the camera, but behind the camera you have a little bit more flexibility. I did just read an article, or it was an interview with John Boyega, how he was talking about when he shot, specifically when he shot the last Star Wars film, the Episode 9, he grew out his hair so that his character would have hair that was grown out. And the specific hairdresser that they chose for the film had no experience with African-American male hair. And so she didn't know how to style it properly. And that's an interesting situation where maybe having diversity in the kind of back, below the line, or, these types of areas would help to inform things like how the character is perceived on screen, even if the character is a different race or whatever, or there's just more voices is better usually. More different voices are better usually. There we go.
Yeah, it's so funny because when you suggested this podcast, I thought this is going to be easy. This is just things that I've seen. I won't have to fumble over my words. I won't have to worry about all these movies I've seen before, I've watched recently, blah, blah, blah. And now I've done nothing but stumble. So I'm glad that you did. So welcome to my world. We've often talked, you and I, on this podcast about if the movies are made, then the nominations can come. Okay. Hidden Figures comes to mind. That movie was multiple nominees, but I'd never heard that story before. And if somebody hadn't decided to make that movie, we would never have seen it, so forth and so on. So I think the idea of worrying about whether or not you want to make a movie about all white guys in the 60s is not the issue. The issue is you have a producing team who are thinking of projects, and maybe they wouldn't think of this film, but they want to be an Oscar contender. And I'm not saying that producers of films do this just to win Oscars. I'm sure that's in the play when they're thinking about things. So maybe so-and-so's script about a young transgendered female comes to them because this is the diversity pile that they got. And they read it and they love it. They make it, and the first transgender female wins an Oscar. So that to me is a good thing.
Yeah. So, all right, we'll move on to what we've been watching. And before I let you tell me what you've been watching, I know you've seen I'm Thinking of Ending Things. So I am about an hour into it right now, and I don't want you to spoil anything or say anything because I've seen some of the tweets that you've been sending out. So I'm trying to quarantine myself from any kind of... I realize that because everything I've been looking at recently over the last like 2 days or something, it seems like everybody seems to be talking about it. So I need to like get up to speed on it. So I'm not there yet. So, but I determined this evening that I needed to start at least. So just please keep anything I'm thinking of ending things related away from this podcast. I'm sure we'll circle back around soon.
Well, let's just do a podcast on it.
Yeah.
When you're finished with it, we'll do a podcast on it. Technically speaking, that's my friend Nancy's fault about the tweets. She tweeted us the other day about wanting our help. You know, she just finished it. I believe her quote was, "I'm shook," and help actor and engineer podcast. And so I was actually in the middle of it, right around where you are right now, watching it when she tweeted that. And I don't know if Netflix is a good thing or a bad thing sometimes. Being able to walk away from something, it might not be the best thing. But then again, when you're dealing with a film like this, maybe it is such a good thing, because you do need some distance sometimes between what you've seen and what you might see and what you will see, if that makes sense. So I definitely think we need to talk about it. Yeah.
Okay. What else have you seen other than that?
I do want to apologize, because I did realize about 3 tweets in that you were receiving the tweets too. And I thought, oh my gosh, has Josh seen this movie? And I was like, have we?
Well, I stopped reading them.
Okay. Because I was like, we really haven't given anything major away. But then, you know me, I said something that I was like, it's always me. Okay. Well, I live with my 83-year-old father, and so we try to watch a movie once a week. And I talked about Black Panther last week that we had watched. And over the last month, we've watched quite a few things. We watched all the Hunger Games, 1, 2, 3, part 1 and 2, Mockingjay 1 and 2. And it was fun to watch those movies again. But yeah, it was fun to watch them again. I'll just leave it at that, because I read those books too. And there seemed to be something else there that didn't seem to be there this time. That's terrible to say, but I mean, you know, Jennifer Lawrence, you got to love her. But I actually found the story itself was interesting to watch again after this much distance between what I read, Jennifer Lawrence and my obsession with her, and now watching it again. In the end, they're good movies. They hold up. They do well. But it was fun to watch my father watch this movie. And, you know, she's a young, beautiful girl and of age. And my father's like, she's intriguing. And I was like, what does that mean? Like, does that mean he thinks she's attractive? And I said, so do you think she's pretty? Yeah, she's pretty, but look how forceful she is. She's like powerful. And I was like, oh, okay. So he's actually getting it on the level that they want him to get it on. So that was fun. And then we watched Hunt for Red October, which I don't think I've ever seen.
You've never seen it?
No, I don't remember seeing it. Other than Sean Connery playing a Russian with a Scottish accent, although they sort of cover that a little bit. Other than that, it's a really well done movie. Yeah. It is suspenseful. It is on the edge of your seat, suspenseful. And I don't know anything about those films and those stories. Yeah. So I can't remember the character's name that Alec Baldwin plays. Not Jack Ryan.
It is Jack Ryan.
Is it? Oh, it is Jack Ryan. Okay. Jack Reacher.
He was
Jack
the first
Ryan.
Jack Ryan.
Yeah, I didn't realize that he was not what I thought he was. I thought he was like this macho guy in the military doing his job and coming in there and hunting for the Red October and blowing stuff up. That's completely opposite of the character that he plays. He's not even supposed to be there. He's kind of a computer nerd. It's a powerful little thing that you have an idea of what you think a movie is, and then you watch it and you're like, oh, I don't know what's worse. The stereotypical things in this world or what your mind thinks you're going to see. So I enjoyed it. It's a great popcorn film. It holds up technology-wise. It looks great. I had no problems with anything. Most of that stuff is probably practical anyway. But yeah, I enjoyed it.
Yeah. Steph and I have been over the last like couple months drawn to these like 1990s, late 80s, early 90s films, and I don't know why. I have a semi-crackpot theory that they're so long ago, quote unquote long ago, that it doesn't remind you of anything coronavirus related. Because if you watch a TV show, even now, even just like, I mean, we watch, Brooklyn Nine-Nine all the time, and then you just like see things and you're like, oh my gosh, like that's why aren't those people wearing masks like initially? And you're like, oh, well, it's, it's before that,
Yeah.
obviously. Or just in general, like things still look the same as they did 2 years ago, but they're so weird and different now. And so you look at something from the 90s, like this is like just a quick list of the movies that we've watched recently. Air Force One, The Fugitive, both Harrison Ford, those are like within a couple days of each other. Twister, The Firm, Jerry Maguire, Footloose. Steph saw Footloose for the first time. She'd never seen it before. So, I mean, we just were, we were going back to the day, and so one of the ones that we watched that I haven't seen in forever, but is great, and you should definitely watch it with your dad, is Crimson Tide with Denzel Washington and Gene Hackman.
Oh, yeah, I've seen it.
Yeah.
Yeah, loved
That
it.
was
Yeah.
so good.
I saw it at the Cinerama Dome in LA.
Yeah. That holds up, actually. That's a good, like, super taut movie. And I'm sure, well, I don't want to say I'm sure, a lot of people wrote on that script. So there's one guy who got credit for it, but like Robert Towne did a pass on the script of Chinatown fame. And also Quentin Tarantino famously wrote a few scenes. There's like a handful of scenes in that movie that he added in there. You can tell which ones they are. They reference Run, Silent Run, Deep, like an old submarine movie. They reference Silver Surfer, and there's all kinds of like, these kind of like, drops that they put in there, or that are in there where you're just kind of like, that seems a little bit out of place maybe, but they're kind of pop culture related. And that's, I think that's kind of his little twist on things. But yeah, we seem to like be drawn to those movies, and those were really nice. Another kind of pair of movies that we watched was Warrior and The Fighter. Now, I know you've seen The Fighter, but have you seen Warrior?
Yeah, we talked about that a little while ago because my father and I rewatched that.
Okay.
Yeah, a couple of months ago. I had seen it originally, and my take on it was, I don't believe that Joel Edgerton could have beat up
Tom
Hardy. But yeah, I didn't buy it. But I really, that's my fault. I'm starting to learn that a lot of things in movies that I think don't work has to do with how I'm perceiving it. And that I'm perceiving it incorrectly, because they make it very clear very often in that movie that anybody can win in this fight. This is not necessarily a strength-based
It's
fight.
strategy.
It is an endurance.
Well, it's strategy too.
Strategy.
Watching Warrior and The Fighter together was kind of a weird thing. Like I watched I watched Warrior first, and then I watched The Fighter like the next day. And I remember The Fighter being so like emotional at the end, like with the fight at the end. And I mean, I don't want to spoil anything for people who haven't seen The Fighter, but I mean, it's a great film. But I seeing The Fighter again, really, I think that it's probably a better film if you like put them up right next to each other. But for me, Warrior at the end was a lot more emotional. Like I got a lot more feeling out of Warrior than I did out of The Fighter, even though The Fighter has amazing performances. And I mean, just hands down, everybody is like firing on all cylinders. Amy Adams is amazing. Melissa Leo's great. But I mean, and then the two leads, Christian Bale and Mark Wahlberg are awesome too. But I just think that the emotional impact of the end of Warrior was like much higher for me this time after, especially I felt like The Fighter was like just this like was some sort of like huge emotional catharsis. But when I watched it right after watching Warrior, I was kind of like, okay, that's it. All right, great. So it was just weird that something that hit me so hard, years and years and years ago, like 10 years ago, is now just kind of like, well, I mean, it's no Warrior, which, I mean, I can't imagine anybody would say that, but I'm saying that. So there you go.
Well, interestingly enough, Christian Bale and Melissa Leo both won Oscars for The Fighter in 2011, and Nick Nolte was nominated for his third Oscar in 2012 for Warrior. Just the following year. Yeah. And he is very good in that. Very good in that. Nick Nolte's, oh my God.
He's the man.
That man, he can act. Yeah.
I also saw a documentary on Netflix called Rising Phoenix, which is really well done. It's about the Paralympic Games and specific Paralympics participants in both the Rio Games and the London Games, and it also kind of digs into the history of Paralympics and like where it started and kind of the problems and issues that they've had kind of getting to the point where they are, but also celebrating all of the athletes that are and their capabilities. It's just amazing, and it's really well shot. It is a fancy documentary, and it has some great content in it too. So. And then I finally saw The Way Back. Have you seen that? The Ben Affleck movie? There's a lot of parallels with King of Staten Island, actually. So it would be interesting to look at those two together. Yeah, that character has kind of like what you said, an Arrested Development, except it's later on in his life. He kind of like hits pause on his life in a destructive way. And then when we start the film, he kind of starts in a process to move his life forward. But it's a Gavin O'Connor movie. It's actually the same director who did Warrior, but it definitely wasn't as impactful as Warrior. It was very kind of like paint by numbers, I think. So that was kind of tough for me, especially since Ben Affleck's he can put in some great performances, but in this one I just felt like he was just kind of moving forward with it, even though he plays an alcoholic, and I guess he is an alcoholic, as like Ben Affleck is an alcoholic. So I know when they were promoting the film earlier in the year, kind of before coronavirus all kind of blew up here, people were making that parallel. And I saw some awkward interviews, but he got through them, I guess. But for me, I kind of wish it was a better movie in general for both him and for Gavin O'Connor. But it was pretty good, though.
I'll probably still see it. And they're talking Oscar nomination for him.
Really?
So he's on a short list.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah. People have been wanting to give him an Oscar nomination for acting since he started acting.
Yeah.
They just, just hasn't done it yet, His brother's done it twice and won. So, a Hollywoodland is probably the one that if he goes his career without an acting nomination, that's the one that he should have been nominated for.
Is that he played George Reeves?
Correct.
Superman? Yeah.
Yes. He's very good in that.
Huh.
Yeah, he's very good.
I totally forgot about that movie.
Well, there you go. Might be partially why he didn't get nominated for it.
Well, there you go. Yeah. Oh, I rewatched Room 237. I kind of went down like a QAnon hole for a little while, like just learning about QAnon. And I was like, I need to watch Room 237 because Room 237 does this amazing. It's a film about, it takes 5 different people and they each in their own words describe their different conspiracy theories on the meaning of The Shining, of Stanley Kubrick's The Shining, not the book, Kubrick's film The Shining. And it is done the film is styled in a very reverent way. It's done super seriously, but by juxtaposing each of these 5 people and their completely divergent theories, it kind of diminishes all of their theories. And I think that it is kind of like it's not like a troll, what you would consider a troll nowadays. I don't think that the director Rodney Asher is making fun of them. I think he's just kind of like allowing them giving them enough rope to hang themselves, and they're moving down that road. So I think that if he would have taken one theory and made a whole movie about that one theory, then it would have kind of lionized it or amplified it in a way that wasn't critical at all. But I think by putting 5 different theories in there and then bouncing back and forth between them, it kind of like diminishes each of those theories, which is really interesting to me because it is a very fine line to walk, but he does it. So I don't know. I thought it was good.
I'm fascinated by people who interject things into films that might not necessarily be there, but then with that documentary in particular, some of that stuff is there and you're like, wow, maybe that is true. Is it true? But after seeing, without making any reference to it, I'm thinking of ending things. I'm wondering how much is in a film and how much we bring to a film and how much we put on it. And I'm wondering if that's not what some filmmakers want us to do.
Sure.
We've talked about people doing DVD extras and not wanting to talk about their movies because they don't want to take away anybody's personalized take on the film. Mm-hmm. So I find that fascinating. I find that in this world that I believe one of the key factors to being human is that everybody wants to be validated. Everybody wants to be approved of.
Yeah.
And even if that's self-approval. And so when you start to put things into movies or seeing things in movies that I might not see, but your experience dictates that you see it, I find that fascinating. And to me, that's art, because we've talked about this for 6 years, that art is in the eye of the beholder. What you see is what you see. What I see is what I see. And the fact that they can be so completely different is fascinating to me. And we're definitely going to talk about that if and when we talk to, I'm thinking about ending things, because whoa.
I think that if Stanley Kubrick were alive today, he would be like the number one fan of Room 237, but because just the fact that he's able to affect other people in that way, I think that he would get a huge kick out of that. Because I know that, I mean, just from reading about him and hearing interviews with him, he was such a fan of not only film, but just of imagery. And he had a lot of reverence for imagery. And the fact that people are able to dig into his film and imbue so much meaning to his film, even if he didn't necessarily have that much meaning in that particular way. I think that's, I mean, he was so obsessive about certain things and so detail oriented that these are his people. Like these 5 people, you know, trotting out their conspiracy theories on The Shining are his people. And so he I think you'd probably really enjoy that. And I'm speaking for a genius, so maybe I don't have a place to do that, but I think you would get a kick out of it though. So.
You just did exactly what I was describing that human beings do. You just did it. I think it's a beautiful thing.
I just pushed it out there. Yep.
Yeah, why not, right?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, so the last 3 films that I've seen with my father just recently were, I finally saw John Wick.
Oh, cool.
I am no longer a John Wick virgin. Thank goodness gracious. People have been talking about these movies forever. And there's what?
3 of them.
10 of them now? So, yeah, so I got a little bit of cynicism in my soul about it. I was like, whatever. It's well done.
Yeah.
Extremely well done. And it's about, you've seen it, right?
Mm-hmm. I own all 3 of them.
Okay. So spoiler alert for John Wick, because I have to say what I have to say, but I can't say it without giving away something. At first I was like, wait, what's this movie about? Why is he doing what he's doing? And then I said, Dad, this whole movie is because they killed his puppy.
Yep.
And my dad said, without missing a beat, but damn, that was a cute dog. And I was like, you got a point.
That's right.
Now I know there's significance to the puppy other than it being a puppy.
Yeah.
Just a puppy.
It's a continuation of
there's a story behind
representation of his wife. Yeah.
Correct. And it is a damn cute puppy. So the whole entire time he's doing everything he's doing, I'm like, yeah, that damn cute puppy does deserve to have that guy's ass kicked, because what were you thinking? You killed his cute puppy. But at the same time, I was kind of like chuckling about it. But it's well done. Keanu Reeves is serious. He is serious. There is a focus that man has that I just don't sometimes comprehend. All 3 of the Matrix were just on, and I taped all 3 of them. And I've watched all 3 of them here and there over the last 2 or 3 months, give or take. And he's very serious. So I saw John Wick, so that's good. I saw The Mist. Have you ever seen The Mist?
Yes. Did you see the black and white version?
No, there's a black and white version.
Yeah, Frank Darabont, he came out with, I don't know if it was just as a part of the DVD or the Blu-ray or whatever, but they did have a black and white version of The Mist, which did feel a little bit more, I don't know, spooky, actually. It felt spookier.
That makes sense to me. I don't know what Frank Darabont's attraction is to Stephen King stories, but he does well with them. I mean, he does really well with them. Speaking of the Shawshank Redemption, the Green Mile. But of course, that movie is all about the ending. And everybody talks about it being the most devastating ending of all time. And I see why, because it is really devastating. It's just, my father kept going, that's just wrong. This is wrong. There's something wrong with this movie. I was like, Dad, it's just a movie. And he's like, yeah, but that's wrong. All he had to do was blah, blah, blah. And I was like, well, I mean, people say that this is the most devastating ending to a movie of all time. He goes, they might be right about that because this is wrong. He just could not fixate on the fact that he could not accept that ending for what it was. Yeah. Because when it happens, he kind of under his breath said, blah, blah, blah is going to happen. And I was like, no way. And then I was like, wait, maybe. Oh, wait. Because I was trying to predict what the ending was to like settle me down. So I'm not the biggest fan of big monsters and weird looking flying monsters and stuff like that. They do it very well in this movie, but I think Stranger Things owes sort of something to The Mist because a lot of that imagery and a lot of that stuff of those monsters and those large things and the way that they looked sort of reminded me of Stranger Things. As a matter of fact, it reminded me a lot of Stranger Things.
The CGI in The Mist was pretty rough when it came to that. Like the things that they decided to show were a little bit rough around the edges, especially compared to Stranger Things, because I think Stranger Things kind of knows what they can bite, like what they don't bite off more than they can chew, and they're able to, make it happen, what they need to happen. But this one, it was swinging for the fences as far as CGI was concerned, and there were some tough spots.
I thought about that, and I don't think it's necessarily the CGI. I think it's how they chose to design the creatures. They went too complicated. Because I guess they wanted the audience to guess where the creatures were coming from. And I was like, oh, well, they're coming from an experiment that the base let out, because they look like they have faces. They look like they have little human faces on some of those bug-like creatures. So I think they just over-designed it. It didn't need to be as complicated as it was. It didn't need to have eyeballs with the teeth and then the things and the flapping things and then the stinger. It's too much. Just make it a very large mosquito. We get it. The larger things that were in the distance were much scarier to me because they were less defined. So, John Wick, The Mist, and then we watched Saving Private Ryan.
Oh, wow.
And I think it's maybe the second or third time I've seen that movie. I don't know if I've seen it since the original time that I've seen it.
Really?
Because I can't I don't think I think I might have seen it one time closer to the time it was released, after it was released, maybe after the Oscars. I'm not sure, but I don't remember seeing it that often. And of course, the first 15 minutes of that film are brutal.
Yeah.
And then the rest of the movie is really character based. And man, Matt Damon puts in a fine little performance. He does a really good job. Everybody's spectacular. Barry Pepper. Where's Barry Pepper at? Where is he? We need him back. What is he doing? I went and looked up his bio. He's been working, but nothing that has come into my radar. I love him. He was in that Spike Lee movie, 25th Hour. I love him. So it was good to see him again. It's just really well done character study. And Tom Hanks, you get this kind of, maybe I'm having a cynical week, I don't know, but you get this kind of cynicism in your head when you see somebody like Tom Hanks and you're thinking, man, he ain't all that. Whatever, 2 back-to-back Oscars, 5 Oscar nominations. He just nominated again after all these years. Whatever. Yeah, he's good, but whatever. We've seen him a million times. And then you watch this movie again, you go, oh my God. He's spectacular in it. He really is some of the choices he makes are very non-Tom Hanks-ish. Nothing about it reminded me of Tom Hanks. It's kind of hard not to remind you of Tom Hanks because it's Tom Hanks. But he does a really good job at making these little choices that color his character in a certain way. And I will tell you this. I think this is the weirdest thing. The most impressive thing about that movie, and I know people are going to be like, you're so silly, but the fact that they were able to find an elderly gentleman who looked like Matt Damon before you knew it was supposed to be Matt Damon. And then when you see him at the beginning of the film, you know it's Matt Damon, especially after the second or third time you've seen it. But then when it flashes from Matt Damon in the wartime to Matt Damon in the Arlington Cemetery time, you're like, wow, that guy is the perfectly cast guy. He looks just like Matt Damon would look as an older guy. So whoever the casting director was, all that film is so deep and textured. And I'm talking about the casting choice of the old guy who looks like Matt Damon. But really, that's an essential part because that film would not work without that beginning and without that end. It would be hokey as hell. And it is a tad bit hokey, but only because of my late cynicism that has crept on to me in the last week or so. But really, it's a powerful movie and it's extremely well done. And it was interesting to watch my father watch it, because he's a little bit younger than that generation, but he is of that generation which remembers that war. Yeah. So it was, and he's military. So it was very fascinating.
Yeah, that movie, I haven't seen it in about 10 years, but I mean, I did watch it. I mean, I remember, I've got the DVD for it. I remember getting the DVD and watching all the extras and all that stuff. But there are definitely scenes. There's a lot of movies that I've seen, even movies I've seen a handful of times, and I don't really remember every single scene or even certain scenes, very specifically. But this movie has certain scenes that are just kind of seared into my brain. I mean, the sniper scene, the medic getting hit in the stomach, and just like kind of, and yeah, having those issues, and just how just super emotional he was in that moment, and just the kind of like how the group gets formed and gets codified together is just, I mean, you're right, it's harrowing, and it starts off in this huge, in this epic scale, and then it just immediately kind of like crushes down into this squad, these whatever 6 guys, and then we're with them for the rest of the film. So yeah, you're right, it's very well done and amazing performances all around.
I resaw The King's Speech. Love that movie. I resaw Being John Malkovich, which was interesting because Charlie
99.
Kaufman is a man I need to talk to him. I need to talk to him. I need to know what kind of person he is. I need to have a conversation with Charlie Kaufman because I loved Adaptation. I loved Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. I loved Being John Malkovich, and it holds up. Being John Malkovich holds up. And what's interesting is how less weird it gets after watching it a couple times. It just seems like normal that they can do what happens in that film. And like,
Yeah.
of course you can. The first time I saw it, I was like, wait, that's a suspension of disbelief I'm going to have to work on. But this time, I don't remember the ending of Being John Malkovich. I don't remember. Do you remember how it ends?
No.
Yeah, I don't want to give too much away, but it's definitely an ending that I don't remember. And I found that fascinating because I've seen that movie a couple of times and I haven't seen it in years. Could be at least 10 years, maybe even longer. But when I watched the ending, I was like, oh, I like this movie even more now getting to remember what happened at the end, because it's fascinating what happens at the end of that movie. It's really well done. I mean, it's just clever.
Well, that sounds like a good place to wrap it up. So next time we'll be talking about prison escape movies. So that should be interesting. And if you got any recommendations, definitely let us know. You can find us on Twitter at Actor Engineer, or on Facebook at facebook.com/Actor and Engineer. You can comment on our YouTube videos. Just go to YouTube and search for Actor and Engineer Podcast. And you can go to our website, actorandengineer.com. And we'll see you next time.